Hey guys, I'm Kyla, and this is KP's Cookies, where I show you how I make cookies baked with love in every bite. Today, we're going to be making apple pie cookies. So welcome to my kitchen. Let's get started. As you can see, I'm a firm believer in preparation. In order to have the best results, you have to make sure that everything is laid out and ready to go. I've prepped all of my ingredients. Before we get started, we're going to be making two different sections. The first section is the apple pie filling, and then we're going to move on to the actual apple pie cookie. Step one, prep the apples. We're going to peel and chop all of the apples before we add them into the caramelized butter mixture we're about to make.
I used Granny Smith apples. Personally, I like using them for baking because they have a very tart sweetness that cooks very well with the sugar. I usually end up buying far too many of them, so we're going to probably be making a lot more apple pie filling than we're going to need, but I'm kind of okay with that because that means that I have the opportunity to make some more cookies later on, as well as to perhaps make some apple pie. Now, when you're using sharp objects, obviously, in the kitchen, you want to be super careful. Make sure that you have your knives sharpened, etc. And my favorite part, of course, is sampling the little apple pieces and even saving some of the skins for later. I know my dog appreciates that too.
See the brown when left out in the air. They're not going to be left uncooked for too long, but one really nice, quick, easy fix for that is just to squeeze a little bit of lemon juice over the apples to keep them from browning while we get started on step two, which is actually getting the caramelized sugar and butter mixture started. Okay, so what we're doing now is I'm actually preheating a saucepan so that when we put the butter in, it's going to melt a little bit more quickly. What I like to do with butter is I'll leave it out for about 20 minutes or so before I start cooking so that it'll soften up. Now the thing is we don't want to burn the butter. So when I add it into the pan, I'm actually going to turn it all the way down just so that it's on very low heat. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Now what this is 8 tablespoons or half a cup of butter. Don't need more than that. It is unsalted. I don't like using salted butter just because I like having control over how much salt I'm adding into the dish. Whenever you are doing a recipe that does call for salted or unsalted butter, you have to make those sorts of considerations. So, there we go. Butter's already beginning to melt. So I'm going to reduce the heat over here. Okay, so the first thing that I do now that the butter is melted is I'm going to add in a little bit of flour just to form a paste, if you will, almost like a gravy. Obviously, that's probably not the context you want to be thinking about with cookies. But let me just count that out. That's 2, 3. You can kind of hear the bubbling sound as the butter is cooking. Now, I do have this on the lowest possible heat setting, but the heat settings on my particular stove are a little bit finicky. They like to do what they want, so I have to keep a really, really good eye on it. So now that we have the paste in there, I am going to add in my sugars, white sugar granulated and dark brown sugar. And we'll get that all mixed up together. Awesome. I am going to add a little bit of water just to sort of thin the mixture so it's not so thick, because what we're going to be doing is actually bringing this mixture to a boil. So let me just add in a little bit of water. I'm not going to add in the whole thing. I'm going to kind of gauge how much we need just because we don't want the filling of the cookies to be too watery either. So bring the heat back up on this baby, and we're going to bring it to a boil. There we go. So you can see now, it's this nice smooth mixture. Let's get that going. Alright, so we'll let that get boiling, and as soon as it does, I'm going to actually just reduce the heat so that it can simmer for a little bit, and I'll add in the apples so that they'll simmer all together and kind of soak up some of those juices. And while we wait for this to happen, I'm actually going to get started now on the cookie part because it's a little bit more complicated. So we're going to move away from this amazingly delicious looking caramel mixture. Just as you know, caramel is probably one of my favorite and least favorite things in the world to make, just because sugar itself is ridiculously finicky. You know, baking, they say, is a science and not an art like cooking. Cooking, you can kind of add and subtract things and change tastes as you will. But, you know, when you cook sugar for too long or too short or at too high a heat or, you know, don't add the right components, you can end up with a sticky mess that burns to the bottom of your pan. So I'm going to keep an eye on this while we cook the rest of the cookies. Okay, cookie time. You can see my cooking partner in the corner, by the way. That's Frida. She's actually waiting for scraps from the apple peelings. That's apparently she has this fetish for fruits and vegetables, so who knows. Anyway, we're going to move on to the cookies. Now, what I do with these cookies is I like to have them sort of mimic a apple pie taste. If you've ever had apple pie or a pie of any kind, that flaky pie crust that just kind of melts in your mouth, I try to mimic that taste in the cookie itself. Now, most pie crusts, at least the ones that I personally make, use butter. However, these cookies, in order to kind of achieve the feel, the mouth feel that I'm going for, I actually use a vegetable shortening for that. So the way that this is going to work is, first of all, I'm going to beat in the vegetable shortening, get that nice and soft and ready to go. Then I'm going to take some granulated sugar, white sugar, and I'm going to cream the shortening and the sugar together until they are a nice, almost like a soft consistency, where there's no clumps of sugar or shortening. They are one and same. Just keeping an eye over there on that caramel. It's starting to get a little bit thick, so I might need to add a little bit of water. Got it. Alright, so getting consistency I'm going for. Okay. By the way, I don't use stand mixers, one, because I just never purchased one. Although, hey, if you want to, Red KitchenAid mixer, dream. Anyway, no. I just personally, I actually really do like to mix everything by hand. I'm working on a challah as well as we speak. I've got that rising in the oven. And I just like to knead the whole thing by hand. It's, in a sense, not of accomplishment, but a sense of ownership. You know, you put every single bit of yourself into the making of whatever it is, whether it's a cookie, whether it's bread, a cake, things like that. All right, so next up, egg. Just one egg for these cookies. So there's a whole egg. These are, by the way, obviously not vegan friendly since we started with butter. So beat in that egg. And then vanilla. Now, here's the thing, home bakers. Make sure that you're always purchasing real vanilla, not imitation vanilla, if you ever want to bake correctly. Imitation vanilla, there's something missing with it, so you don't want to use that when you bake. I like to go overboard on vanilla, by the way. I think that it adds an amazing depth to every single cookie that I make. So, alright, there we go. It is a nice, beautiful, smooth consistency, which I'll let you see. There you go. Alright, next up, one more vegan unfriendly ingredient that we're going to add in over here. We're getting nice and sticky at this point. You can kind of see it. So one last vegan unfriendly ingredient, and that would be the milk. Some milk to the crust. That all stirred up. so those would be the wet ingredients. Now what I'm going to be adding in are my spices, my leavening agents, and then the actual flour, which is going to be what is the base. So personally, I like to start with the spices, and then the leavening agents, and then the flour, just so that I have the ability to kind of make sure that all of those pieces kind of get mixed in. So spices first. I used for this particular dish, I have a secret ingredient, which I'm not going to tell you, that I use in a lot of my cookies. Don't worry, nothing bad, I promise. But I also use cinnamon, which I use in most of my cookies as well. I think that that just adds a great depth of flavor. But a little bit of cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice for this apple pie flavored cookie. So I put in my spices, get those mixed in so there's no weird spice clumps. Everything is evenly distributed. Now, in terms of leavening, for most cookies you're going to see in your recipes, and you're probably familiar with this if you've baked cookies at all, you'll probably see, baking soda, baking powder, maybe a little bit of salt. Well, in this particular recipe, I am using baking soda. I'm also using salt, but an interesting ingredient. This is called cream of tartar. It's a really strange ingredient. You can use this as a leavening agent. I know substitutions sometimes include vinegar or buttermilk, things of that nature. So get that going in. It's not one you see often, but it is a good ingredient to have if you are a home chef and want to ever branch out into some more exciting recipes. All right, and the last bit is a nice big bowl of flour, which I will put in a little bit at a time since, as I said, I do not have my red KitchenAid stand mixer. Put that in. Let's see. The trick is to make sure that you're distributing everything evenly so you don't end up with any flour left out or sticking to the side of the bowl or the bottom of the bowl, which you'll then find at the very end of the recipe when half of your cookies have already been put into the oven. Careful not to overmix as well. So that's going. And then as soon as we get this all mixed in, what I'm going to start doing is shaping my little mini apple pie cookies and getting my filling all set. So I'm going to throw those apples into the caramel mixture so that they can have some time to soften and soak up some of that flavor. Okay, so now it's time to actually get these cookies on the cookie sheet. I'm using a non-stick sheet so I don't need to spray any, I don't have to butter it, no pan, nothing like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be using like a cookie scoop, or an ice cream scoop, I guess, just so that I can get a more uniform size to them, although I am going to be sort of manipulating with my hands, so don't worry, they are clean. I did wash them. All right, so here we go. All right, so what I like to do is scoop up a nice amount of cookie. Now, this is a lot of cookie. Most cookies, like if you're going to be doing like a Nestle or a Toll House or any of those pre-made ones, you're probably going to see them about half that size. When I make cookies, I make them about a teaspoon size. So what I'm going to be doing, though, is because I'm making a pie base and a pie top. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten this cookie out. You can see that these cookies, they're not easy to make. They don't take a short amount of time, but it's worth it when they come out well. So we're going to get a small spoon for scooping in my amazing, delicious caramel apple filling. So scoop out a nice amount and stick that right into the center of the cookie. It's going to be oozy. This is like the messiest thing you can possibly do, these cookies, but they are so worth it. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to, and I'll let you see what I'm doing, I'm going to create a pie top for my cookies. So I will put a layer over, Let that ooze a little bit. Yum. And seal it up. Simple as that. Now you get this nice little cookie. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and fill up this cookie sheet. Okay, and to finish them off before I stick them into my oven, which I've preheated to 350 degrees, I'm going to top them with a little bit of cinnamon sugar, because there's obviously not enough cinnamon or sugar in these yet, and it's fall, so hey, why not? We're going to celebrate. Now what you can do, if you'd like, and you are kind of a dork like me, what you can do is actually flatten out the edges of all the cookies, just like that. And then kind of slowly roll them up so that they look almost like the edges, the scalloped edges, if you want to get technical, of a pie crust. So I'm going to do that with all of my cookies because, hey, why not? We want them to be true to life apple pies. Scallop my edges over here. And then we will go ahead and throw them into that preheated oven for about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll check on them until their bottoms are beginning to brown and the apples are beginning to cook. Alright, so into my preheated oven we go. Alright, we'll see them in about 10 to 12 minutes. Now the most important thing about cookies is timing. So we're going to go pull these guys out of the oven before they brown. So follow me. Oh my goodness, they look amazing. And that, my friends, is how I make my world-famous apple pie cookies. Thanks so much for joining me here at KP's Cookies, where every cookie is made with love. And love is FDA approved and a recommended part of your healthy diet. So let me know if you want a batch. We'll see you next time.